Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're jumping right into something truly fascinating and honestly deeply misunderstood. Think about it for a second. When we get hurt, we all react differently, right? Some of us cry, some yell, some of us are on the phone with our best friend for 3 uninterrupted hours. But there's another type of person, and honestly, if you're tuning into this, there's a really good chance you're one of them, or maybe you deeply love someone who is. When this person gets hurt, they go completely, utterly quiet. Pulling back, shutting down, just disappearing into silence. Look, if this is your default response, I want to validate you right here, right now. This behavior constantly gets slapped with labels. People call it a communication style, or they say you're just being stubborn, or even worse, intentionally manipulative. But you know what? The research tells us a completely different story. It's none of those things. It's actually a deeply rooted, biologically driven survival mechanism, all shaped by how your nervous system was wired early on. So the big question we're tackling today is this: why exactly do some people go completely silent when they're hurt? We're going to give you a clear roadmap to understand the hidden nervous system wiring and that early childhood conditioning that drives this exact behavior. Seriously, by the end of this explainer, you are never going to look at someone's silence the exact same way again. All right, let's dive into Section 1, the roots of silence, and look at exactly where this comes from. Here's the thing. Nobody is born going quiet when they're hurt. It's a learned adaptation, and it almost always traces right back to early environments. Picture a home in early childhood where showing emotion was met with either total dismissal or just outright chaos. A child's brain is absolutely brilliant. It adapts. Then moving into adolescence, that developing brain learns a really harsh lesson. Expressing pain doesn't make things better. It actually just invites more hurt. So by the time adulthood rolls around, containing that pain has become an automatic, knee-jerk survival reflex. You go inward. You handle it alone, in a place where it literally cannot be used against you.
Psychologists actually have a name for this, an avoidant attachment pattern. Now, as this develops from emotionally unresponsive or maybe just inconsistent caregiving, something absolutely crucial shifts. And I want to be super clear here. The silent person hasn't suddenly stopped needing connection. Not at all. They simply stopped reaching out because, well, somewhere along the line, reaching out just stopped working. Okay, moving on to Section 2, the freeze response, and what is actually happening beneath the surface.
So I like to call this the iceberg model, because from the outside, the silence just looks like coldness, right? It feels like distance. It feels like the person is actively punishing you by withholding affection. But beneath the surface, it's a completely different reality. It's kind of like a duck gliding on a pond, calm above the water, but paddling frantically underneath. Inside their brain, it is incredibly loud, panicked, and just overwhelmingly stressful. Their amygdala is firing rapidly. They are literally trapped in a biological threat response.
You see, emotional pain triggers the exact same biological alarm system as a physical danger. The nervous system doesn't choose fight or flight here, it chooses freeze. And the neuroscience behind this is just fascinating. High limbic activation in the brain actively suppresses the prefrontal cortex. And that's the part of your brain responsible for language and reasoning. So they aren't purposefully withholding words from you. The verbal expression system simply cannot run under this level of stress. Biologically speaking, the words are literally unavailable.
Which brings us to Section 3, the shame-based defense, or why won't they just say what's wrong?
To really grasp this defense, we have to look at their underlying core belief. My pain is not safe in other people's hands. Just let that sink in for a second. This belief was formed so incredibly early in their life that it doesn't even feel like a belief anymore. It just feels like objective, undeniable reality. The template for this rule was written long before they even had the cognitive capacity to question it.
And this builds into an ironclad, logical chain of shame-based self-protection. For this person, vulnerability is viewed as weakness. Weakness means you become a burden. And being a burden? Well, that results in being unwanted. So what's the logical conclusion their brain reaches? If they show you they're hurting, you're going to want them less. The tragic irony here is profound. They are shutting you out not because they don't want connection, but out of a desperate, terrifying fear of losing the connection they already have with you.
Now, let's look at Section 4, the anxious avoidant trap, and how this plays out in the relational cycle. When this invisible internal mechanism finally collides with the outside world, it creates an almost impossible cycle. It's like we're perfectly wired to accidentally push our partner's absolute most sensitive buttons.
Let's say an anxious partner pushes too hard for answers. The silent person interprets this as, see, expressing my needs just creates conflict. But if the partner backs off and gives space, the interpretation flips to, see, nobody actually stays when I'm hurting. In both scenarios, that old childhood wound is fed. You've got two people who desperately want each other, yet they are completely unable to reach one another.
All right, Section 5. The invisible cost and the heavy toll this silence takes over time.
From the outside looking in, the silent person seems extraordinarily self-sufficient and totally drama-free. But the research on emotional suppression is crystal clear. Unfelt feelings do not just disappear, they accumulate. And this expresses itself sideways. We're talking physical tension, chronic fatigue, or sudden, unexplainable bouts of emotional numbness. Sometimes it even results in eventual explosive releases. But honestly, the saddest cost of all is relational. Every single time they hurt and say nothing, the distance grows. It leaves them feeling profoundly isolated and completely unknown by the very people closest to them.
So, how do we get out of this? Let's dive into Section 6, Breaking the Pattern, and go over some actionable steps.
If you love someone who shuts down, the instinct to push, to demand they talk, or to take their silence personally, that is exactly the wrong move. The true antidote here is calm, consistent presence without any pressure. Saying something simple like, I can see something's wrong. I'm here when you're ready. Take all the time you need. This centers their needs, not yours. It allows their nervous system to experience a totally new, healing template, one where their pain isn't immediately met with demands or abandonment.
Now, if you're the person who goes quiet, listen up. Insight alone is not going to change your nervous system. First, you've got to recognize the silence for exactly what it is, an outdated childhood survival tool. Then you have to practice deliberate, chosen vulnerability with a trusted person. Because your nervous system only updates through repeated safe experiences, basically finding out over and over again that the sky doesn't fall when you finally speak up. And this is exactly why therapy is so highly recommended. It accelerates the whole process by giving you a controlled, emotionally safe environment to actually practice letting someone safely hold your pain.
If you're someone who goes quiet when you're hurt, please hear me on this. You are not broken. You were incredibly smart and adaptive when you were young, but you aren't in that environment anymore. It might just be time to slowly, bravely lower the wall you built to survive and let the people who love you finally see you. So ask yourself, is the silence that once protected you now the very thing standing in the way of the closeness you actually want?